right, you may be seated. I want to welcome everyone to Congregation Shaarei Kodesh as we honor the life, the memory of Doug Bender, Yosef Moshe Ben Yoel. I want to begin with a ritual that we begin burials and funerals with. It's called Kriya. And what it is we take a piece of the clothing, a ribbon that the family is wearing, the immediate family, and we say a blessing, and then we tear the cloth. We tear the cloth because it's in the Bible. When Jacob learned about his son Joseph was killed, was actually not killed, he takes his garment and he tears it. And this became the ritual that we do. Whenever we heard about a loved one or a teacher, we would tear our clothing. So now we do it at the funeral. And so I'd like to begin with this moment to bring all of you in with this. We're going to say the blessing with the family. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Dayan ha'emet, which means praise are you Adonai, our God, who rules the universe, who is the judge of truth. And we'll say these words in Hebrew and English. Adonai Natan, V'Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem, Adonai Mevorach. Adonai is given, and Adonai has taken. Praise be the name of Adonai. We'll take the ribbon and tear up from the bottom. Tear it up from the bottom. We're gathered here today, our hearts grieving, to pay tribute to the good life lived by Doug Bender. I want to mention his family, his beloved wife Diane, his son Adam and daughter-in-law Samantha, his son Andrew and Kelsey, and Michael and Amanda, and grandfather to Maxwell, Quinn, and Olivia, and to his mother, Joni Shapiro, to his brother, Stephen, and his wife, Anya, to his brothers-in-law, Doug and Ellen, and Greg and Tammy, and his sister-in-law, Denise and Milton. We also remember those who are no longer with us, his father, Joel, his in-laws, Kamal and Marcia. I want to begin by, so one of the things that Adam said, he's totally right about this, Doug was a collector of good rabbis. I'll explain. So I want to read some, and I told my colleagues, I said I'm going to read it from my senior colleagues. They're friends of mine, but they're older. First, I want to send regards from Rabbi Elliot Cosgrove of Park Avenue Synagogue. We spoke this week. He said he hadn't talked to Doug and Diane in years, but he said he cherished the start that they gave him when he ran an overflow service at B'nai Torah. He finally remembered both of you. And now I'd like to read some remarks from Rabbi Ari Sunshine, who's a rabbi of Shaarei, Israel in Dallas, Texas, where Doug and Diane, Diane's family is there, and Doug had as you'll see, a special relationship with Rabbi Sunshine. I first met Doug and Diane 24 years ago when I was a senior rabbinical student at JTS. I was one of 6 senior students who came down to South Florida for a week to teach in various different synagogues and other Jewish institutions as outreach for the seminary. Doug and Diane were kind enough then to open their home for a full week to 6 strangers they had not met, all of us rabbis-to-be, hosting our group for the entire stay. And while the opportunity to teach Torah to a good number of people in South Florida would have certainly been fulfilling enough, The bond I formed with Doug and Diane was the real gift of that experience. We had deep and meaningful conversations about Torah, Judaism, JTS, shuls, the rabbinate, the future of the conservative movement, plenty of baseball and other sports mixed in, and we became fast friends. We remained in touch after I was ordained that spring and took my first job in Charlotte. Doug and I would catch up from time to time with phone calls, and we usually talk about how my work as a rabbi was going and how things were going at Shaarei Kodesh, how our families were doing, and of course, baseball too. Jen and I visited Doug and Diane multiple times in the next couple of years when we were down in the Miami area, and I stayed with them when I came to visit my ailing grandfather in the early 2004. During that trip, my grandfather somewhat unexpectedly passed away, and of course, Doug and Diane welcomed me to stay with them as long as I needed through the funeral, and were incredibly supportive during my time of loss. Over the years, as my family and I moved from Charlotte to Maryland and then to Dallas in 2017, we still kept in touch and chatted periodically. And we're delighted to find out that small world of small worlds, the Benders had close relatives who are active members of my shul in Dallas. Diane's brother, Doug Sheena, and his wife, Ellen, and their boys, Alex and Benny. So in these last number of years, we've had the pleasure of celebrating Benny's bar mitzvah together, as well as seeing each other during at least one Pesach visit they made to Dallas. From that very first time we met in January of 2002, I knew that Doug was a special guy, and that he would be someone with whom I would want to remain in touch with. He was outgoing, warm, menschy, a great kibitzer, and someone who would do anything he could for the people that he cared about. Doug was a committed Jew, a dedicated shul lay leader, and someone who loved shul and loved rabbis. I just happened to be one of the fortunate rabbis who got to know him well and call him a friend, and for that, I will be forever grateful. I was shocked to hear of Doug's sudden passing this week and know that his time on earth ended way too soon. Sending love and hugs to Diane, to Adam, Andrew, and Michael, who I still remember as Mikey, from when we played catch in the street those many years ago, and their families, Doug, Ellen, Alex, and Benny, and the rest of the extended Bender and Sheena families. Yehi Zichro Baruch. May Doug's memory continue to bless us all, just as his presence and his warm smile illuminated our days during his life. And now a final message from Rabbi Matt Berkowitz, who is the president of the Schechter Institute in Jerusalem, and also knew the family through here when Rabbi Berkowitz worked for JTS in Boca. First and foremost, more importantly, my heart goes out to Diane and the whole family, the Shaarei Kodesh community, indeed, the whole Jewish community of Boca Raton. Doug will always have a very special place in my heart. He was my first meaningful connection to the South Florida Jewish community. As soon as I began teaching for JTS, Doug was my biggest fan, so enthusiastic about JTS reaching beyond 3080 Broadway. More than that, his warmth, wit, sense of humor, and Texan charisma were infectious. I always felt his love, openness, and care. Indeed, Doug's life can be understood as reflecting many of the values expressed in the last week's Parsha, Vayechi, which focuses on legacy, moral responsibility, and the impact one leaves on future generations. Like Jacob in his final moments, Doug's actions emphasize the importance of living with integrity, strengthening family and community bonds, and passing on values through example rather than words alone. And now I'd like to share my words. Doug always had a flair for the dramatic. And the week he left us is a testament to that. Not because it was New Year's Eve, but because his death came between two, in my opinion, two of the most important parshiot in the entire Torah, Vayechi and Shmot. We end one book and we begin another. Vayechi, the last parsha of Genesis. Shmot, the first parsha of the book of Exodus. Vayechi literally means, and he lived. But that's not what the story is about. The story is about Jacob dying, his death. Jacob gathers his family around him, to give them final blessings before he left earth. This was Jacob's second chance. We forget that at the beginning of the story, Jacob was destined to live an ordinary life, but fate or God stepped in. And at the very end of his life, despite the difficult times he went through, he had his second chance with all of his sons, including his beloved Joseph. When I think about Jacob and the end of his life, I think about Doug. Doug didn't have this deathbed scene like Jacob, but he left a legacy that will stand for generations. We spent his last Shabbat on earth together here in this humble storefront that he loves so much. Doug was at Shaarei Kodesh almost every Shabbat morning, and if he wasn't with us, I knew where he was. He was with Max and Quinn. On Friday night, just this Friday night, he was outside talking to our very talkative daughter, skipping services like he would sometimes. And on Shabbat morning, he was there again. And it was that last Shabbat that Doug heard his final sermon ever. And the sermon I gave this past Shabbat was about second chances. And I asked everyone, have you ever had a second chance in life? And I said, not a small one, but the kind of second chance that maybe you didn't think you didn't deserve. And on the other side of that question, have you given someone else a second chance? Not because they earned it, not because it was easy, but because something in your heart told you, if not now, then never. And that's who we're honoring today. A man who built this place, our second chance shul of Shaarei Kodesh. Without Doug, I likely wouldn't be here today. I'll never forget the first time I spoke to Doug Bender. It was about 17 years ago. I was in my tiny New York City apartment, and I received a call from a very loud and talkative Texan from Boca Raton. We had a short conversation in Doug Bender terms. It was only about an hour. And he wanted to see if I was interested in becoming the rabbi of the most unique congregation in the United States of America. He waited until the next conversation to tell me he was in a storefront across from a gas station. I'll forgive him for that. But at the end of our conversation, I asked him, I said, I'm a 28-year-old guy. Why'd you call me? And he said, because you have a Keter Shem Tov. That word, Keter Shem Tov, is a quote from the Ethics of Our Fathers. For those who knew Doug, he could quote rabbinic literature just like that. So here's the teaching. The Rabbi Shimon said there are three crowns: the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, and the crown of kingship. V'gabeya al ole tov, v'keter shem tov ole al gabe. The Keter Shem Tov, which is the crown of the good name, is more important than all of the other crowns. The crown of the good name is your reputation. That is what Doug valued more than anything. Reputation. It's how he lived his life. Not many people knew this about Doug, but Doug went to almost every funeral that I officiated at. He was at almost every shiva in our congregation. There were some funerals that had 200 people, and some funerals that had 2, and he was there. I never asked him why, but I imagine it was because he wanted to be remembered as someone who showed up for others, not just in the good times, but the hard times. And it wasn't just Doug. It was his wife, Diane. During that interview weekend, both Doug and Diane took care of us. Diane's job was to take care of Alyssa, who was 7 months pregnant, and they made us feel at home immediately. And we knew even before the job was offered that the Benders would be like family to us. And that is what they became over these last 17 years. The Bender family reputation spoke for itself. The Keter Shem Tov, the crown of a good name, is not about being boastful, though. Doug was a humble man in many ways. I know that sounds hard to believe. I'm going to prove it. Because you would know from his public speaking. He was an incredible public speaker. I got to share this story I shared with the family before. There was one Shabbat where I asked him to give the Dvar Torah, and I guess he forgot. But he got up there anyway. And I was sitting next to my father-in-law, who's over here, and he gave an amazing, incredible Dvar Torah. And Murray said to me, I don't remember a word he just said, but that was the best speech I've ever heard. He didn't just speak for himself. He spoke for us, for community. Believe it or not, Doug exemplified the quality of anavut, humility. Doug hated it when people called Shaarei Kodesh Doug Bender's shul. He did. He built it for us, not for him. And after he was president of our shul, he never held another board position, but he was always involved, rolling tables out, giving out dum-dums, as you see, to the kids, and volunteering. But he knew that it was a younger generation's turn. That's what he told me. Doug was one of the most invested Jewish leaders in our youth. He always talked to our teens, and they kept in touch with Doug, and they still do, into their 20s. He would often go to the teens' soccer games, football games, even though they weren't his kids. He wore a special kippah every Shabbat. It was Yossi Pesa's bar mitzvah kippah. Doug was close with Yossi, like he was with the other teens. I actually just learned that Yossi created his Instagram account. But Yossi passed away at 19. And one of the things I'll never forget was seeing Doug at the Shiva in front of the family. His love of our Jewish youth was not an act. It was ingrained in his soul. Although Doug loved Judaism, the Jewish people, the Jewish future, more than anything, Doug loved his family. On Jacob's deathbed scene, the rabbis envisioned a different conversation. The Midrash says that Jacob had doubts about the next generation. Would they follow the same God that Jacob did, that Isaac did, that Abraham did? Or would they be lost to Egypt? The Midrash says that Jacob gathered all of his children together, and he said, "Will you follow the God of Israel?" And they said to him in unison, "Shema Yisrael." Jacob's name was Israel, remember? Shema Yisrael, hear, O Israel. Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. The Lord is our God, the Lord alone. At that point, Jacob takes his last breath, knowing that he could rest after his people's destiny is assured. Doug may have had a lot of surrogate grandchildren, but he loved his 3 beautiful granddaughters more than anything in the world: Maxwell, Quinn, and Olivia. This brings me to this week's Parsha, Shmot, names. It is the names of our descendants that carry on our legacy. Doug cared deeply for our people, and he cared deeply for this country, the United States of America. I want to return back to that first conversation I had with Doug. Doug, in that first conversation, said, "This place, Shaarei Kodesh, wouldn't exist without our but-fors." He said, "But for these 3 women, this shul would not be here. Amy Pesa, Dara Salam, and Nicole Katz. They scrubbed the floors of our storefront on their hands and knees," he told me. The truth was, but for Doug Bender, we wouldn't be here today. He was too humble to say it, but it's the truth. There likely wouldn't have been a CSK, and every simcha that we've had, every loss that we've had, would not have been surrounded by this beautiful community. I will forever be grateful. And so should each person who is blessed to be part of our community, past, present, or future. Doug loved synagogue life. He loved morning minyan. And we can honor Doug by being that person who shows up when no one else will. May Doug's Keter Shem Tov, his crown of a good name, live on through his children, his grandchildren, and through every person who walks through the door of this community that he helped build. Doug, thank you for giving us all a second chance when you didn't have to. Thank you for giving us a gift that we can never fully repay to you, but we will repay by living out your legacy, by living with our best Keter Shem Tov, the best crowns of our good names, by showing up when no one is watching, by giving second chances, and by building something that will outlast us all. Amen. I'd like to invite up some speakers who are very close to Doug. First, I'd like to invite up his brother, Stephen.
Thank you, Rabbi. Who knew my brother would have the rabbi open for me? Can you hear me? Do we look and sound alike? Good. For those of you from South Florida, I am Douglas's brother, Stephen. I'm told y'all refer to my brother as Doug, yet I always called him Douglas. There are some other names for Douglas Allen Bender. DAB, as you recall, Brill Cream, a little dab will do you, or Dougie, or most importantly, Robo, the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all. I suppose it was Douglas that nicknamed me Rojo at a time when I had hair, and that hair which I had was red. It was much the same shade as Quinn. Perhaps we share other personality traits, but that we'll explore another day. Adam approached me and said, Rojo, do you think it would be okay if the rabbi and the three boys spoke today? I said, that would be perfect. He agreed, and Diane said, no, Stephen, you're his brother, you should speak. Thus, my inclusion was cast in stone. It should be noted I asked Adam how long I should speak, and he told me take a full 2 minutes if you need it. Hell, Douglas and I can't even say hello in 2 minutes. I cannot explain why I'm standing here today on many different levels. This was not supposed to be the way, nor would I ever contemplate not having my brother in our physical world. There is no scenario where I could imagine speaking for my brother. He could always speak for himself. You should know that Douglas and I are very different, yet very similar. Let it be known that I'm somewhat OCD, anal, a control freak, and would never stand up and deliver comments without first spending several hours drafting and redrafting my thoughts. I believe that's accurate. When I served as president of my shul, I called Douglas every week to ask what to say from the Bema. He told me, tell a joke, keep it short in the middle, and end with another joke. He provided me 20 years of good Bema humor. It's unlikely that there was a joke that I could tell that someone here has not heard today. What the heck? As Adam, Andrew, Kelsey, Mikey, Amanda, and my son Aaron are all attorneys, I publicly cite this as a Douglas Bender joke. I recall once when we evacuated from one of the several hurricanes in Beaumont that I noticed a box in our house that I did not recognize. My lovely wife suggested that I leave it alone. It was personal. Upon our return, when no one was around, my curiosity got the best of me. I opened the box and inside found 3 eggs and $2,000. When my wife returned, I admitted that I had opened the box and asked for an explanation of the contents. She told me that every time I gave a bad speech, she would put an egg in the box. I interrupted her and said, 39 years of marriage, 3 bad speeches, that's not bad. Anya continued, every time I got a dozen eggs, I would sell them for $1. So how are we different? Douglas never saw a bema, a microphone, a room full of friends, family, or strangers that he could not or did not stand up and eloquently and comfortably speak extemporaneously from his heart. Granted, if you knew my brother, it might have started with something from the Talmud, Mishnah, Pirkei Avot, a wise old rabbi, or even an old reference to Boo Boo Jorgensen in our hometown of Port Arthur. But make no mistake, all gather and pay full attention. Dare I say that Douglas was the ultimate dinner table middler before Curb Your Enthusiasm. Douglas and I grew up in Port Arthur, Texas, a small industrial town with a small, vibrant Jewish community near the Louisiana border. We had a great childhood, but you should know that not unlike many of us, Douglas was a little different then. He was a little wilder, or maybe a lot wilder. As my big brother, he was my template for growing up, for what to do as well as what not to do. I think I can safely say there was nothing Douglas could not talk somebody into or out of. He had the gift of gab and married that to his encyclopedia knowledge of information and photographic memory of family, names, stories, jokes, and events. His charisma was natural, and he displayed the qualities of a leader from the beginning. We were different in that I was in the weeds, grinding, trying to connect the details, while Douglas was a dreamer and spent his time at 30,000 feet. We met in the middle, and I can't speak for Douglas, but I think that is what we loved about each other, coming at life differently, but always circling back to family and our shared experiences and lives. When Douglas was younger, I would say the two most important features of his life were having fun and having more fun. But that changed. Fun and more fun turned into family and faith. I have given some thought to how that occurred, but give me a moment to return to that. Again, different and similar. I remained in Texas near our hometown to raise my family. Douglas saw a new and exciting chapter in his life and relocated to Boca Raton. My situation was familiar, comfortable, manageable. Of course, Douglas finds an unfamiliar place, knowing nobody, but no problem. His personality was a force of nature. He immersed himself in the Jewish community and established strong roots here. He chose a new path here in Florida, I suppose like many of you have done as well. Amazingly, some of his new friends became my friends, which is a testament to him. He raised his 3 boys here, Adam, Andrew, and Mikey. You know them, the 3 shy, quiet, introverted guys sitting here. Yeah, right. They should be heckling me any minute. Truly, they are a blessing. They're always smiling. The life of the party. Never miss a punchline. Party motivators and just good guys, not to mention all succeeding in their own professional endeavors. If you were not paying attention, they are each a reflection of Douglas in some unique way. As your father would want me to do, let me offer you 3 a lesson today. I know many children may not like how we as parents do things. If you have any doubt, I can get your cousins Aaron and Hannah up here and confirm that. I would ask each of you to consider your shared experiences with your dad and remember anything that he did good or bad, you agreed with or disagreed with, and remember that was your template for life, just as it was for me growing up. All those events made you who you are today personally, professionally, and in your relationships, as you either emulated his actions or perhaps you did not agree and thus chose an opposite path. Either way, he guided you, and you can use that as you continue on life's path and share that with each other as you enjoy one of the strongest brotherly bonds I've ever witnessed. He loved you guys, and he cavilled every time he shared any story with me about each of you. Your lives have expanded with Sam, Kelsey, and Amanda. They are all special and unique in their respective ways, and I trust that you share with them the same light and spirit that your father did with Diane. As if not enough for these incredible ladies to be special and unique, Each of you are talented and professionally accomplished. And although Anya and Hannah will grimace when I say it, to Uncle Rojo, you're hotties as well. Boys, I welcome you to the club. Guys who partnered way over their head. There's a big group of us here today, and I won't embarrass any of them and say their name. You can thank me later, Ira. I suppose if I asked everyone here to raise their hand if they thought they were best friends with Douglas, most in the room might do so. That is because he made you feel that way. He held court. He engaged, probed, asked questions, remembered every detail that you shared with him, told jokes. His volume was a different level and offered a constant source of entertainment, not always PG rated. My goodness, if he were here today, he would be working this room like a politician. This would be the Rose Bowl. Again, similar and different. At gatherings, he would always ask me, did you meet this person or did you hear this story? And I miss them all. While he accumulated each and every person's story, background, how they were related. And if you know Douglas, he was soon matching birthdays of everyone in the room. I always loved and admired that about him. I'm not sure anyone will ever fill that hole for me. To those of you still pondering being his best friend, let me clarify, you are not. Although that could almost be any other child, dog, or stranger, after Diane, I might suggest it is Max, Quinn, and Olivia. Robo was all about those three beautiful girls at all times. Maybe because we grew up as two boys, or maybe because he had three boys, or maybe after my daughter Hannah or Hooney broke the ice and showed him how girls rule and boys drool. Whatever the reason, he was in love with each of his granddaughters, and that was his primary focus. Or maybe it is just because they are all so dang cute and perfect. I don't know for sure, but I can promise you that his love, care, and attention is something that each of them will have the rest of their lives, and it's our duty to keep that love and spirit alive through the stories we share with them as they continue their journey in life. I said I would return to identify what changed Douglas's path in life. I do not think it was a book, a sermon, or any other epiphany. Again, similar and different. We both married and outkicked our coverage. What changed my brother was Diane. She offered the rudder to his life. Their union was one of shared love for one another, commitment to family, love of the children and grandchildren, and building a home that was worthy of what they each brought from their family experiences and putting in their own spin on it. Their home was not about sticks and bricks, but one of love, joy, family, friends, and lots of fun and laughter. Diane smoothed out the wild child and took fun and more fun and made it family and faith. From the beginning, Douglas loved his in-laws, Papa Ken and Marcia, of blessed memory, like his own parents. Diane's siblings, Doug, Greg, and Denise, and their spouses, Ellen, Tammy, and Milton, and all of their children were like his own. There was no distinction for Douglas and Diane, as family was family. The same for my wife, Anya, and my children, Aaron and Hannah. It was just one big family, and Diane was a constant in his life and stood by his side, through good times and bad, but with the shared vision of life and love, and always trying to please one another. Diane brought him into the light and helped make him who he was, but his light continues to shine through Diane and their progeny. Diane is what transformed my brother, and I thank Diane for her selfless love and support. And as I lean on the template Douglas offered me, I have always loved Diane and always will. I must say that my brother was old school and that he preferred voice to text. But I'm wondering how many of you today receive daily text bombings from TikTok. He was prolific. I'm not really sure what rabbit hole he went down to find this content. And perhaps like me, you received the Douglas cell calls. The telephone rings and you pause and say, should I answer? You know it won't be short, but who cares? I push my work aside and buckle in for the ride. It is worth it. You'll be greeted with a series of questions about life, sports, pop culture, family history, or something even more esoteric. I do not know about you, but my calls with Douglas require a no minimum minute cellular plan. Tomorrow at around 9:30 in the morning, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do, as my phone will be silent. That voice, his quips, stories to me, his jokes, Diane and boy stories, my landman recap, it does not matter. The topic is it just will not be there. All I can hope to do at that time is cling ever so tightly to the memories that I have and maybe plug Adam in as my surrogate. Back to my Douglas template, a little brotherly love humor. I stand here today recalling my wedding in Houston in 1986. Douglas chose to introduce, for the first time in his life, a very bad movie mustache to compromise our wedding pictures. Who knew then that Douglas would create a code word that would proliferate every friend's family or our wedding? Douglas did not drink, but decided at my wedding to announce either 8 or 9 times that it is not every day that your brother gets married, and accompany that proclamation with a shot of vodka. I believe our cousins Gordon and Susan will attest that later that night, he assumed a 45-degree angle, leaned against the fence, and reversed his prior consumption. When Adam arrived at the morning brunch, he was asked where his father was, and Adam announced that he ate some bad cheese. Every college friend at my wedding now describes a hangover to their children and grandchildren as having had some bad cheese. Douglas and I spent the last few years talking almost every day, multiple times a day, about family issues. We have shared this experience, and we cared for our mother, always talking, agreeing, disagreeing, but in the end, spending time together. I was planning on standing shoulder to shoulder with him as his chapter for Joni B. closed. I'm not sure how to proceed without him, but I'm comforted to know that the frequent Diane and Douglas visits, Mom knew Douglas was there. Who would not? He was loud, funny, and bounced around the room with a smile from Mom soon to follow. Douglas and Mom loved each other. I'm not sure that he knew that pre-Mikey, Mom was having Adam and Andrew over to spend the night. I stopped by in the morning to check on the boys, and 2 of them were eating ice cream sandwiches for breakfast. Dismayed, I asked Mom what she was doing, and she said with a sly grin, "Just getting even with Douglas." I have received numerous texts and calls from staff and family members of residents where my mother lives, expressing their sympathies. They guessed we were brothers by appearance. I don't know why they see that, but he made such an impactful impression on each person he encountered in such a short time. Virtual strangers, they were compelled to reach out and express their sorrow. As I do not live here, I'm not sure I can even begin to address Douglas's life here, his relationship with synagogue life, as it dates back many years. A great scholar of our time, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, said, "It is better to have prayer without a synagogue than a synagogue without prayer." It was not a building for Douglas, but the personal relationships, the thought-provoking conversation, the study and shared community that was synagogue life. I believe that Douglas was the true reflection of this quote in his real life. It rings true today that Robert Frost was right when he summed up everything he knew about life in 3 words. It goes on. I know as I walk away from this sacred space today, I will be sad, and I may experience some of that sadness each time I recite Kodesh during the next year. Yet I know that as the pain fades, I will be blessed with the many cherished memories I retain. Yet I know, Douglas, as I say goodbye to you, there are a few simple images and thoughts that I will clutch so ever tightly today and forevermore. Your huge smile, your endless stream of advice, an endless resource of humor, your incredible love for your wife, children, grandchildren, family, multitude of friends from all walks of life, and congregational family. Douglas, your work is complete here. You have shown us the path, and we shall continue together as a family. Douglas, go in peace. As I bid you farewell, know that your memory shall forever be a blessing to us all, and may your soul be bound up for eternal peace. As I say, rest well, and I love you.
Thank you for those powerful words. I'd like to invite up Doug's sons to all speak, Adam, Andrew, and Michael.
Good afternoon, y'all.
A young man was sentenced to prison. On his first day, he sat in the cafeteria and an older prisoner shouted out, 42, and everyone burst out laughing. Another old prisoner shouted out, 16, and everyone burst out laughing. A third prisoner shouted out, 73, and everyone burst out laughing. Finally, the young prisoner asked the old prisoner next to him what this was all about. The older prisoner said, we've been here so long, we've heard all the jokes, so to save time, we just numbered them all. When someone wants to tell a joke, they just yell out the number.
The young man thought for a second and then shouted out, 57! Nobody laughed. He turned to the older prisoner and asked what happened. The older prisoner shook his head and said, son, it's all on the delivery.
As everyone here knows, our dad had no problem with the delivery of his jokes or the frequency of them. But in addition to being a great joke teller, he was an amazing husband, father, and grandfather.
Our dad didn't have a traditional nickname like Grandpa, Poppy, Pop Pop, or Zadie. He was Robo. And you may wonder why. It goes back to January 1st, 2005, when Vince Young and the Texas Longhorns beat the Michigan Wolverines in the Rose Bowl. As Rojo mentioned, is considered the granddaddy of them all. That day, Douglas Bender declared to his 23, 20, and 12-year-old son, who had no kids, no girlfriends, no prospects, that his grandchildren would call him Rose Bowl. Fast forward to January 18th, 2016, Max Bender was born, and Rose Bowl became Robo for short. And he truly became the granddaddy of them all.
Our dad always taught us to look for the positive in every situation. It has obviously been challenging for us to do that this week. We decided to take a step back and try to find beauty in the suddenness of this tragedy. In doing so, we realized that we need to cherish not only every day, but every moment with our loved ones. This has showed us, and everyone here, you never know when it will end. We've distilled it down to 3 things that we would like everyone to focus on moving forward. Hug the ones you love, call the ones you miss, and find forgiveness quickly after disagreements.
Since 2017, my brothers and I have a running shared note where we write down wise, wild, and wacky quotes our dad has said over the years. Most of these are not fit for print here today. However, one of his favorites and appropriate ones was help the helper. And our dad was the consummate helper to everyone. Since his passing, many have reached out to ask what we need, what they can do, or how they can help. And so as our dad has done many times, we made a top 10 list. Here are the top 10 ways we can all be more like Robo now that he's gone.
Number 10, find the fun. Drop balloons from second-story balconies or throw watermelons from the roof for no good reason.
Number 9, be there for your grandchildren. Visit your newborn granddaughter in the NICU for hours on end. Or pick up your 7-year-old granddaughter at 9 a.m. for her basketball game because her father double-booked the tea time.
Number 8, love a dog. Walk your neighborhood daily, calling all of the dogs by name, or create endless group text threads to share TikTok videos of boxers and chihuahuas.
Number 7, talk to a stranger. Find your son's post-college roommate for him while waiting in line at Starbucks. Or insist on taking the camera from a person so they can get a complete family photo that isn't a selfie.
Number 6, create connections. Start a random group text thread with people who seemingly have no obvious connection to each other. Or, if you really want to level up, take charge of creating seating assignments at events to ensure that nobody sitting together knows each other, but they'll leave that event as best friends.
Number 5, take the trip. Join your 21-year-old son on a trip to Las Vegas because he qualified for the World Series of Poker. Or go to Africa 1 week before the birth of your first child, hoping you make it back in time.
Number 4, go the extra mile. Don't just show up on game day for your granddaughter's soccer team. Show up at the multiple weekly practices during the season. Or purchase and write a note in 60 individual birthday cards for your wife's 60th birthday, even though we all know she just turned 45.
Number 3, bend the rules. Take your 3 sons out of school early to go to opening day for the Marlins. Or take your 12-year-old son to see Soul Plane, which was rated R because of discussions of sex, scatological humor,
That's farts and vomits.
and scenes with marijuana and hallucinogenic mushrooms.
Number 2, make the drive. Pack your family of 5 into a Suburban and let the wheels touch the asphalt in 48 states, or head to Miami at 5 p.m. to pick up 4 place cards for a bride who needs them at Mar-a-Lago by 9 p.m.
Number 1, always make a minion. Be the first and find the other 9 for a friend, or be the 10th for a complete stranger, so that everyone can properly grieve. Robo's oldest granddaughter, Max, wrote a note that she wanted us to share. Me and Quinn are going to miss Robo a lot. He was definitely the best grandpa ever. Some things that he did that me and Quinn loved was that he would sleep over on a Saturday and he would buy us lots of candy. We would watch a funny movie and he would make funny comments about the movie. He would also take me and Quinny to Postal Suites to get stuffy and candy. He focused a lot on making us happy, and that's why we are going to miss him so much. My dad always asked an important question after dinners, parties, and events. What's the difference between the British and the Yiddish? The British leave and never say goodbye. The Yiddish say goodbye and never leave.
As we left the house last night, there was a supermoon and a cloudless sky. My daughter Olivia looked up and said, "Hi, Moon. Hi, Robo. Robo may have said goodbye, but he will never leave."
Thank you, Adam, Andrew, and Michael. I'd like to end our service, the chapel portion of our service today, with Psalm 23 and then the El Male Rachamim. Following this, we're going to be going to burial at the South Florida Jewish Cemetery. Keith Cronish is going to come at the end to give us instructions. Psalm 23. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, Bino deshe'ar bitzeni, Al mei menuchot yenaleini, Nafshi eshovev, Nafshi eshovev, Yancheni b'maglei tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech begeyetz al mavet lo hirara ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni taroch lefanai shulchan תערוך לפני שולחן, תערוך לפני שולחן, נגד צוררי דשנת, ושמן ראשי, דשנת ושמן ראשי, דשנת ושמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך yamim. The Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou prepare a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. Ask you all to please rise for the El Maleh Rachamim. El Maleh Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hametzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, B'mahalot Kedushim Utehorim, Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim Et Nishmat Yosef Moshe Ben Yoel Shalach Le'olamo Began Eden Tei Menuchato Hana Bala Rachamim Hasti Reba Seter Kanafecha Le'olamim Utzror B'torachim Et Nishmato Adonai Unachalato Ve'anuach B'shalom Al Mishkavo Ve'nomar Amen. El Maleh Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, to the soul of Yosef Moshe, Doug Bender, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us all say together, Amen. You may be seated for just a moment. I'd like to introduce Keith Cronish.
Friends, and those of you who are watching on Zoom and in the other room, I want to just take a moment and in behalf of the entire family, thank each and every one of you for your reaching out to them and your kindness and making your time available to be with them here today. It's days like this that are very difficult for an entire community, and we recognize that the family's immediate circle feels the most grief. However, just outside that circle is each and every one of you who are feeling your sense of loss and grief. What you can do to be the most help to a family is be there. Please, over the weeks, months, and time ahead, be there. That is what you can do. I'd like to ask everybody to rise. And as I give you these final instructions, please, one more, please, if you are going to the cemetery, the interment is at the South Florida Jewish Cemetery. It's located in Lake Worth. It'll be on Congress Avenue and Lantana. For those of you who can join the procession, please go directly to your cars, turn on your bright lights, and take a moment to do your emergency flashing lights. That's the red triangle.
okay? So please do that. For those of you who will not be able to go to the cemetery, please be careful and allow those who can and are going to exit the parking lot. It's a large crowd, it's a small parking area, and everybody's cooperation will be best for each other. When we arrive at the cemetery, for those of you who have been identified as pallbearers, please come to the rear of the hearse. We'll put you in the right place. The South Florida Jewish Cemetery is a traditional cemetery. Last evening at the funeral home, the men of the Chevra Kadisha after Shabbat came over and they performed the ancient tradition of Tahara. I'd like to explain to those who don't know that is a meticulous bathing and washing and cleansing and drying, and only when dry and clean, pristine, is the takrichim or shroud placed on him. Once Doug arrived at the funeral home, there was a shomer or a watcher who was there from the time he arrived right until we left to come here and do this ceremony. Through Shabbat, the shomer was there. These are part of our ancient culture and traditions that I like everybody to know are being performed for Doug. And when we arrive at the South Florida Jewish Cemetery, although we knew several days ago when this ceremony would be, the grave was not started to be dug until this morning. That grave was dug by hand because everything except for the big stones being moved by machinery is done by hand. The grave is dug by hand, as we will all have an opportunity at the gravesite to completely fill in the grave by hand. But when we arrive at the cemetery, we'll have the pallbearers carry the casket, not rolled. Everything is by hand. And we will follow Rabbi as the family will follow behind the casket, and we will stop 7 distinct times. These stops are a reflection of our reluctance to do what it is our obligation to do. And when we're at the gravesite, and you have an opportunity to shovel, we start with the back side of the spade. It's a very difficult way to shovel. Once again, it's an outward reflection of our reluctance to do what we know it is our obligation to do. And then once you've done one shovel with the back side of the spade, turn it around and have at it. Shovel as much as you'd like. And when, and only when we have completed the shoveling, will we be reciting the Kodesh prayer. Please remain at your seats until the casket has been escorted from here in the sanctuary area. The family will follow behind us. Please go directly to your cars.
All right. So thank you all for attending. And for those who can join us for the burial, please join us. Shiv information is in the packets, correct? The Shiv, yeah. Tonight, 6 o'clock tonight at Diane's house. Information is there, and it's by email as well.